On today's show, we have the swing whisperer himself, Doug Latta, and we're talking about the swing and we're talking a little hitting.
Welcome to another episode of the Baseball Awakening Podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered, unsexy side of player development. Get ready for some knowledge bombs with your host, Geoff Rottmayer.
Welcome to the Baseball Awakening Podcast. I'm Geoff Rottmayer, and today I'm sitting down with Doug Latta, a pioneer in hitting instruction. There are guys who work with professional hitters, and then there's Doug, who builds professional hitters. Doug worked with hitters across all levels, to include the MLB, MILB, LBM, KBO, and NFP. While he worked with a lot of guys, the guys that have publicly came out and crediting Doug to overhauling their swing would be Justin Turner with the Dodgers and Hunter Pence with the Rangers. So, Doug, how are you, sir?
Good, Geoff. How are you?
I'm doing good, Doug. Thank you. You know, it's Halloween morning, and we're going to talk some baseball and talk some hitting. You know, Doug, a lot of people in the baseball community know who you are or they know of you. But I think some of us are kind of curious to kind of the backstory. So I kind of would like to start there. At the when you got started out as the hitting coach and what got you interested in teaching the swing?
Okay. I played baseball through college, and when I graduated, I was lucky to be able to continue playing around locally with a couple of teams that would play colleges, and in the off season, a lot of the pros would come out to get that bats. So I stayed very involved in the game, and obviously a big part of that is hitting and talking hitting. So that's always something I think you never give up once you're kind of hooked on the game, and all the little nuances and the desire to understand hitting. It's a tough thing to do. And, you try to make that picture a little clearer. So as I got older, opportunity presented itself to work as a coach. And I just was exposed to, not only, the youth players that I was around as a coach, what they were being taught that really wasn't helping them. But on the team I was playing for, we had a lot of minor leaguers and also professional hitters, big league hitters, that we would talk about what their hitting coaches were doing, what they were being asked to do. And, 30 years ago, some of that just made absolutely no sense. And I would see hitters who would actually basically get worse. Good hitters get to a certain point, suddenly get forced to change something, and, their numbers go down and their swing changes. And because I was playing with them, I could, compare the difference immediately. So, that fascination with why is hitting so poorly instructed, I guess, resonates probably in every hitter. And eventually I became a high school coach, and same time I did that, I opened a hitting training facility. I had a good friend, Craig Wallenbrock, who was a scout then, and was also doing some hitting instruction. I liked what he taught. He came in, he became one of my, used our place as the place, so we kind of teamed up a little bit to start working with hitters. And, that means the day we opened, we were working with, major league hitters. So, for 14 years, there was a lot of learning going on, working through the process. From the top of the game, which kind of helps really feed down into what would you want at the grassroots? How would you want a young player learning or developing in order to be in a position to hopefully have a swing that might be able to carry them up into, high school, college, professional, Major League Baseball. And here I am today.
Yeah. Awesome. But Doug, I had a chance in August to spend some time with you and a bunch of other coaches out there at the ball yard. And, when I was there, I was all ears and very little mouth. but I got a chance to learn in depth what you teach, and it made a lot of sense to me. So, and we're going to get into, what you believe and teach, but from the time that you started teaching the swing to what you're teaching now, what were some of the biggest things that you discovered that led you to what you are teaching now?
So I think the evolution was, I guess I was lucky to have a pretty good concept of what we wanted in a swing. I always believed in, having a hand path and being able to, get the bat through the zone rather than around it. I think the biggest change wasn't necessarily in what my concept of, what would be a good swing, what would create a consistent swing path, was that it really had very little to do with the swing itself. First and foremost, we had to look at, how the hitter's body was working, because if the body doesn't work right, you can't get off the right swing. And it became pretty evident that a tremendous number, probably 95% of hitters, maybe more, work against their bodies. And basically the swings they have are the swings that their bodies will allow them to have, not necessarily the swing that we need to be, consistent and effective at hitting a baseball.
Yeah, so if I'm listening and I don't understand what you mean by the swing is working against the body, can you explain what that means?
Well, if you look conventionally, most people think about hitting a ball. They'll flatten the bat out behind them. They'll bring it around in an arc, around the plate to a point where the barrel is flat and hits the ball, and then immediately that arc continues around their body. And what that generally means is that we're going to be, moving shoulders. We're going to be twisting and spinning the hips, which is actually not the way our body generates power. So we call that, we were all grind hitters. And it seemed like a lot of work for these players have to try and get the barrel all around to the ball, hit it, and then finish. So what we look at is, if you look at the elements of the golf swing, and when I say the golf swing, I don't mean to say that the golf swing is an overlay for the baseball swing. It isn't. There are dynamic changes in the body that are different when we're hitting a baseball coming at us versus standing in a stationary, static position, hit a ball sitting on, a tee. But if you look at the golf swing, it goes through the point of contact where the golf club will hit the ball and then continue along that same line forward rather than quickly exhausting off in an arc. So when you make that move, the body is actually working in concert with itself. And more of the components that we want are starting to support the move and actually back up the move. As you think about it, for a hitter, most hitters are taught to spin. And that's where either the front hip, front knee, front shoulder, everything starts coming off plane, again, to drag that barrel around. That's not really a body, proper move. Our body's not made for that kind of twisting and torque. And then anybody that does that ought to just feel with their lower back screaming, right?
Yeah.
What we're really made for is we have got a lot of tensile strength as long as we can work underneath our shoulders. So if you keep your shoulders parallel, your head stayed above it, and you're able to just swing your arms through in a line, that actually picks up our body strength and allows us to have a better overall approach. But more importantly, it gets our backside to work the way it's supposed to, which is everything fires in support of the body, and then the rear glutes turn and follow the move and actually keep that line going that we talk about, rather than just spinning off the legs. You recall teaching like squash the bug, hips first. That's spinning, and that's not how our legs work. Our legs are, derived. They're not meant to spin, and not the rest of the body either. So
yeah,
that's what we try to say. Let's start getting the body working in a positive way, the way it's designed, And frankly, I've had a lot of success, and most of it's just getting people or hitters to use their bodies better, to, take the grind out and start working in concert with their body.
Yeah, so that phrase, how the body works is thrown around quite a bit by a lot of people based on what they teach. And people are now confused as to what they really believe or really how the body should work. So can you explain how the body works?
Yeah, well, we probably work from the ground up, based upon a balanced setup. And as you know, I have a tremendous bias that I will admit to readily. That balance is my bias in not only hitting, but everything else we do athletically. No one has ever claimed that the body somehow is stronger or more efficient from a position of imbalance. So it just makes sense that, if we're going to do something athletically and something is demanding as hitting a baseball, we'd want to do it from the best possible balance we could get to. So we think about balance as being obviously the equal distribution, 50-50 of weight, between the feet, between the legs. And what we try to do is work from the ground up. We want to make sure that a hitter, is in the ground, can feel the ground, and basically that their body is centered. And what that means is that their hips are centered inside of both legs. So particularly the back hip isn't farther over the back leg, which is probably 99% of people who pick up a bat. And we can talk about that later. But what I want to do is I want to really work to center the hips to make sure that I'm equal. And then again, have my upper body, my torso, and of course, shoulders and head supported on top of that lower half. So our sequence would be, and every hitter is slightly different. At their first move is going to be to, most likely pick up their front foot or something along that line, and then move forward to a second position of balance, the 50-50, where this is where we're going to begin our swing. So you kind of envision a hitter in a relaxed setup, and I mean relaxed, no tension in the body, because tension slows us down. And one of the other things I always look at is I really want relaxed shoulders, because if the shoulders are carrying a load or are tight or elevated, we don't feel our legs because we're actually disconnecting from our legs. So the ability to just sit with relaxed shoulders and kind of sit in our body through those balanced hips and into the ground, you'll feel your legs. Everything's there. There's good connection. And by making that move 50-50, now you come down in your legs at a 50-50. Head still remains centered. The head will move forward, but it stays centered in the body. And then we can articulate our swing by getting our top hand to start underneath to create that line we've talked about. I think I demonstrated when you're out here in Northridge. It's a fairly simple sequence, but the tough thing is most hitters' bodies are not set up after a period of time because essentially they're working from compensation. The hitters usually load up over the back leg to either a great degree or a little degree, but that doesn't allow them to make a clean move forward. So from that point that they're literally set up, their body is going to make compensation moves to try and get the job done as the hitter, tries to affect a swing. And all of that has a price. And I talk, you have a definitely loss of efficiency, and that means a loss of consistency too.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the screenings? The on-base U and the FMS, and is that something that you like and use, or are those something that maybe kind of overglorified in your opinion?
No, I think it's a good idea for athletes, at any level. And again, the functional movement screens are pretty important just to kind of see where an athlete's body is at the time. And I think that's a good thing that's being brought to people's attention, not only for hitting, but, most of the other parts of
Sure.
Athletic performance too. Whether or not they by themselves, I like that because it dictates, just, what muscles groups may be weaker than others, how things are being sequenced. It can isolate some movement imbalances for sure based upon the body's, that particular player's physiology. So I'm in favor. I think that's not a bad idea. I think the youthful hitters, not to mention all the way up, into the professional ranks, definitely by the time they're going to high school, some assessment would be a really good idea. And the sooner you get to those assessments, the sooner you start working on what we call correctives. It's something we do here, and you're seeing more and more of it out there in the the field. As a standalone, they just tell us what the body's doing. Now, where I see a problem is when some people pay, a heavy amount of attention to internal, external rotation, and I think that's because they still don't understand really how the swing works, and are working from a position where they think there's more spin or torso moves in the swing than I think would be considered ideal. But once again, the use of those assessments, the fundamental movement screening, I think are a pretty good idea. And again, the younger you get the body starting to move differently, or work corrective stretches or exercises, it's going to be in a better position to be athletic for sure. So I think that's not a bad thing.
So with that, what are some of the things that you have seen with hitters that have prevented them from executing good swings?
Well, I think you can find that even with some body imbalances that we might isolate on a screening, hitters still would be able to try and understand balance, but then all the other articulated movements might be somewhat affected by, the muscle imbalances. So just because they might fail some of the screening or be, negative on some of the screening tests, doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to make adjustments. I don't want to, say that they can't.
Sure.
But the nice thing is typically for the younger hitters, the pre-high school, high school hitters, even college hitters, I think one of the things we focus a lot on and we isolate is, glutes, glute work. Some weaknesses there that a lot of people become very quad or thigh dominant. That could be base position. We've got a bunch of catchers in, and across the board, only one of them, has what I would call, good enough glutes, but they're all doing extra glute work. I think that gets missed in a lot of training, and the glutes can mean so much to just movement and strength. Occasionally you'll see, a corresponding, some tight hip flexors, basically all things that can, start being corrected. But do they absolutely prohibit a hitter from getting better? No, but it's definitely part of the long-term project.
So to get more into the swing, you are big on balance. And this is something that I've been paying more attention to. A lot of hitters set up with more weight over their back leg, even just slightly, which can make a big difference. So can you talk about balance and how a guy can get balance? Because you can look at a guy and he looks pretty balanced, but he's slightly more over that backside. So I don't think we really maybe understand balance.
I would agree. And one of the things that we do, obviously, we video and hitters look at themselves. And, people can look at description and I'll ask, how do they look balanced? And somebody will say, yeah, they look really balanced. And I'll say, no, they're over their back leg. There's more weight over their back leg. And it might be some eyes go, oh, I kind of see that. Is that important? Absolutely. And what really happens is the human nature, the way we're designed, the way our minds and bodies work, kind of work against us as a hitter, because if you hand a 4-year-old a bat, they're probably going to stand up fairly balanced. But the minute they even hold like a 10-ounce bat behind them or flat, or create a position where, there's weight or strain, in the upper body, the backside of the body is going to shift back over the back foot to try and support that weight. It's just human nature. So what you wind up with is, probably from the word go, most hitters will be more on their back leg than on their front leg. And it might be let's say a 53-47. It all matters.
Yeah.
Because if we're on top of that back leg in any manner, it's going to inhibit our ability to really move effectively forward, to have the backside actually carry us forward. And as frustrating as it seems, we can work from it. But then by the time a hitter is older, that all the moves become ingrained to that bad early position.
Yeah.
What we recommend is, doing a few exercises just so hitters can feel balanced. We talk about being able to do what we call a slinky. A hitter will get in their setup, squat down, drop down just to feel that they're in center. Then they come up, then they take a move to 50-50, and they squat again, trying to maintain where's their center. I like hitters to be able to look in a mirror to really kind of see how their body's moving. The other thing we like to do is, get in a hitting position or get into a balanced position and turn our feet and knees out a little bit, almost as if we're bow-legged. And when we get bow-legged, we pretty much shove everything into the middle. It gets us a really good balance. And then we'll actually have people start doing the same kind of moves to do a squat almost bow-legged, to just kind of feel, where's my center? And start learning to place the center. Now, then the drawback comes is when we place the center and we feel really balanced with our, hips and pelvis in the middle, and everything's balanced well between the legs, we've got to lock in that position before we take our bat and put it on the back side of our body, because it's going to be somewhere between the rib cage, obviously, and the back shoulder, which means we have a weight and something being held out of balance. So the body is going to, lower half of the body is going to try and get under that, and you can't let it. So you've got to set the lower half, now that you understand balance, and then be able to set the upper half independent of the lower half, and then start making moves again over and over. We have hitters just make that move from their setup to 50-50. Older players, even younger players, can carry a plate weight, like a 10-pound weight or 25-pound weight or 45-pound weight for the young men, and the professional players can center a plate and make a move to 50-50, holding that plate and being sure that the plate stays centered to their torso. And that plate is held with the hands underneath the armpits, because we want no tension in the shoulders at the same time. Anything that kind of builds that balance, I'm 100% in on.
Yeah. So you got a kid that does the move of a quad dominus squat. What's the feel that we need to be relaying to them? Is it the weight on the toes, the heel, the instep? What should they be feeling?
Well, if they're quad dominant, obviously we're going to try and have them try to feel if they can learn to activate the glutes. There is a ton of glute activation and glute movement exercises that are out on social media, on the internet, and I'd strongly advise parents and players to kind of look at those, whether it be glute bridges or variations of different other glute planks, etc. There's a ton out there, but some of it's just if they're really glute dominant, and I'll also make sure they're in the middle. But then I have them just kind of activate the glutes a little bit, just kind of pinch them or find them, and just set them up and kind of set everything in the middle. There shouldn't be too much weight in the thighs, because that probably means that we're too heavy in the thighs. So glute middle and down, elevator down in the middle if they're going to do the squat from there. But it should also be something that when you're going up and down, you're kind of feeling, that the glute is taking you down and the glute is pulling you up.
Nice. And then we talked about a forward move to balance. A couple things with the forward move, that means that the entire body is taking a nice controlled movement forward, not just the front leg. And then, so what's the rule of thumb with you as far as the distance of how far one should move forward?
Well, the actual movement's going to change when it comes to live pitching, but is it regulated by inches or feet? Not necessarily, but we should have some controlled move from our backside to that forward position. And that forward position where we start swinging, that's what, we kind of call the 50-50. So although the setup is going to be balanced, the idea is moving from setup to the best possible 50-50 we can get to. And the key to that is being able to kind of move, like I said, carry the center of your body, your head straight down in the center, being able to keep it steady as well as you move to that 50-50. The tough thing is instead of having people reach away with their front foot or step away with their front foot, is having the back side be able to actually make the move forward where the front side is just coming down rather than reaching. There's some good drills. There's a monster lateral walk with a resistance band around the upper knees, which we like. That also is similar to the idea of being bow-legged and just making lateral moves without changing your hip position. We found that to be kind of an effective idea for a hitter to start feeling their moves. It's just reincorporating, natural body movements into a body that gets completely trained to do something different. So that move to 50-50, we could spend hours talking about that one.
Yeah, so you are also big on no back shift. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the back shift is any move that a hitter's, first move is to either move back over their back foot or back past the back foot, or in some ideas, the idea of loading the hands and arms back to create power. We want to eliminate all of that because it actually works against the hitter. And it's sad because it is, a lot of that's very prevalent in hitting instruction. When we talk about the back shift, we're talking, there might be minute clicks that you may not even be able to see without a video, but we're not going to see the back hip move over the back foot. We're not going to see the back hip move over the back foot. Well, if we're set up properly, we should have that back hip inside of that back leg, so we're in a good 50-50. It should be able to make a clean move forward without having to go back first. But you also realize that with that concept of upper arm loading, load the hands behind you, create separation, these are also things that forced a back shift because, again, now we're moving a weight. Now we're making a body move that the body is going to try and maintain a strength underneath it. And that gets us in trouble. And the sad thing is, the farther back your hands go, the less consistent you're going to be as a hitter. And it actually takes away power because now you turn into a shoulder hitter because when your arms get that far behind you, you're going to make shoulder turns to come around the ball. And that upper body may feel strong, but nothing. And the minute you go there, you lose the lower half. You're not going to get the glutes and legs to work the way they need to. So you become basic upper body hitter, and the strength of that, chest, shoulder, back, that doesn't compare to what that, those glutes and those thighs and that lower half can provide. So it can, some of that teaching about creating power. Well, I always tell people, if you watch somebody throw a baseball, we never do any of those things to throw a baseball.
Yeah.
And if those magical things they teach hitting create power, then I guarantee you that it would create power in a throw too, and it doesn't. So if you follow throwing mechanics, which I believe is a closer overlay to hitting than, like a lot of people think golf is, the throwing mechanics and the way our body moves is all about balance and movement, holding the center, rather than counter stacking on top of one side of the body and then reaching behind that point and then trying to do something athletically. So the key is to eliminate the back shift, by learning to, again, move as we ordinarily would move. But remember, a lot of the back shift can be created from the hip and the pelvis in a bad position over the back leg, or, the body responding to the backward move of the shoulders and the backward moves of the hands, trying to get a load, or, gather or coil the hips, some of the things that are being taught, because we know that once that happens, the body's compromised. We're going to be in compensation mode, and we're not going to be as efficient as we possibly can.
Yeah, and that's tough because you have the tech out there, and they have all these parameters, and some really get bought into, their instructor or their coaches having this K-vest, and the data looking really good. That must mean something is right, and that kind of that K-vest kind of encourages some of the back shifting of the hands, among others. So, I like the data just as much as anybody out there. But I've kind of gotten to a point where, talking with you and some others, where we need to figure out, what's applicable and what's not in terms of what's useful for our hitters. So what's your take on the tech, the K-vest, and the reflection of how the swing should be?
Well, obviously, I agree. There is a lot of data out there. But remember, people forget data is always subject to interpretation, and you've got to kind of isolate where that data is being generated. The key is we see that too. And once you understand kind of how the body moves, and the K-vest becomes almost unnecessary. For the reason is that when you get the body moving right, we're going to be generating the forces we need to. And, I've seen data presentations using the K-vest, and, everybody saw the charts and everything else. And, they put on a corresponding swing analysis on it. And the swing I see is absolutely horrific, as in something I would never teach a hitter.
Yeah.
And yet, because they've got the K-vest on, they've got all this data, look at this, and this, but, they're actually teaching. I don't care what the K-vest tells them. And if they're basing numbers on what that K-vest is telling them based upon that body move, it's simply wrong. It's not a good swing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, we've gotten to the point where people are looking at, these things like exit velocity and launch angle and data, which is what's really important is what we're seeing in how the body's moving and how that swing is being created.
Yeah.
As we spoke about in that clinic where you participated, things like blast motion, diamond kinetics are out there, and people are, buying into them 100%. And those algorithms are wrong, because if you look at the way they actually not only demonstrate a swing, but some of those people are actually now trying to instruct people how to hit. I mean, on their websites and on their social media pages, they're showing people drills and patterns of movements that are absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And what we call fatal flaws in swings, because it's based upon their concept of hitting, about getting the barrel around to the ball, which is not what you want. And it really puts the body in a compromised position. And, so I get a little upset when I see that, because you put that data out there, or you put the device out there, or you start using the drills that these people tell you to use, and I guarantee you, you're not going to be a better hitter. You might have success at one level or another, but you're going to run very quickly to a point where that swing is not going to work. And unfortunately, when you practice that swing, you're using probably all the poor sequencing that creates the worst patterns that we have to try and fix. And here's the bad thing. It depends on where you're at, level of the game, how much time you've got left, what kind of, time you've got, to make adjustments. You may not have enough time to get it right before, you can't play.
Yeah.
For instance, how long does a youth player have? They're getting ready for high school. How long do they have to work on building a good framework? Once you get to high school, well, the boys are going to want to, or the boys and girls are going to want to compete to, have a position. So how much time do we have here to try and rework, body moves? Once you get out of high school and go to college or professional ball, same things apply. I get minor leaguers and major leaguers, and those guys have different time frames because, one may just be at the beginning of a career, and another may be towards the end, or another at that critical point where they've got to produce or they're going to be out of the game.
Yeah.
So the key to me is that we got to be careful. I wish we could, be a lot more careful, because unfortunately parents and coaches too are really impressed with what they see, advertised on social media or discussed on social media, I know, organizations use those. We've seen it, forced plates. We've seen all of that stuff out there. But the key is, that's all nice, but what does it really mean, and what happens if we're wrong? What happens if the concepts that we're trying to use these devices to prove or disprove, what happens if they're wrong?
Yeah.
Well, that has, unfortunately, really a bad impact on the hitters. So I think, like I said, if being able to maintain and understand how the body moves and just visually be able to ascertain how pieces are going together, you may not need to understand, what, particular sequence is. I always want to know what the feet are doing. I want to know just, how we're actually in the ground, how we're landing. These are parts of it too. But once you understand how the body starts moving, and when you start getting to that point, all of the other directions fall together. So I don't think we're going to have data be able to make us it might provide some information to some players or coaches trying to learn stuff, but as an absolute, no. It can be a nice thing to have. Is it absolutely necessary? Well, we're accumulating data when we have video. We're accumulating data when we're on the field and watching how balls hit. We're, watching spin, seeing the spin. So that's data accumulation too. And that doesn't have to be, on a chart or on a graph. So there is a way that you're looking. And the bottom line is, we're going out there and compete, have better at-bats in a game.
Yeah.
That's the data we need to know. We're feeling better in a game. We're making better contact. You're a coach. You see it. You get it. Data is nice, but by itself, data doesn't make a better hitter.
Right, and you mentioned the diamond kinetic and the blast. For the people that are listening, those things measure the bat getting flat and then using your shoulders to turn them.
Absolutely,
and it's creating what Doug called this shoulder swing. So, what we really need to talk about is the hands needing to go down the line and hitting through the ball. So can you talk a little bit about hitting through the ball versus hitting to the ball?
Well, we talked about, if you take that conventional idea of the shoulder swing, which they're fabricating out there, sadly, probably to too large an extent based upon where we should be in the game. But that means that our shoulders are turning off plane. They're making an arc around, with the extension of that arc being our hands and the bat, to get the bat to a point where it hits the ball, and then when you continue that spin around and go offline. The biggest thing I tell people, for us, we want to get to that position of 50-50, and it's like I want to put my front hand in a pocket for now, and I want to have my right hand and my elbow right at my rib cage, and my right hand pointed out over the plate, probably above, just inside of my back foot. And then I just want to just spank all the way forward from A to B. And as I do that, just bring hand and elbow and straight down the line. And what that means is that the bat follows that pattern, and it allows me to have a lot of contact points out in front. We're not going to hit balls at the plate. If we're set up in a game, we're on the plate, we're hitting at the plate, we're getting beat up a little bit. We want to get contact out in front through the ball. So what's going to look like is when I swing, my bat gets to a point of contact, the ball gets hit, yet my bat tries to continue along the same line as that contact. The arc would be, or added and around it would be, bat hits the ball and immediately starts going off plane. flat around the body.
Yeah.
And there's just, again, we talked about the posterior chain and the strength of the body. When we hit through the ball in that kind of that swatting or spanking or movement motion, the whole backside now follows that move, just like it does when we throw. And it's just, it's where bodies are designed.
Yeah.
It's so clean and efficient. And once you start corralling those kind of strengths and forces, ball you've seen it. Ball just starts jumping off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say, something that you said when I was out there that I thought was good, was the focus on the body movement and the hand path, not so much hitting the ball, because the focus of hitting the ball leads to more trying to get the barrel to the ball, which sometimes is caused with the use of the shoulder.
Mm-hmm. But and again, as we've talked about, although it's completely the way our bodies are designed for maximum efficiency and force and stability. The minute we picked up a bat and flattened it out, we started using our bodies wrong.
Yeah.
So, and that's, people have talked to me about, this new way of hitting. And I tell people, are you kidding me? If we'd hit like this in 100 years ago, in the 1920s, it would have worked because it's body efficient.
Yeah. We
weren't being as efficient as we had to be. But again, it just, of course, evolved around people learning the game of baseball and not really probably thinking too much about it other than hit the ball. I need to do this. And however that works, I'll go for it. So, it's now that we're looking at trying to change, basically, 100 years or more of, bad body movement training for a substantial number of players in the game.
And we hit through the ball with the outside pitch, the middle, and the inside. So there isn't a different swing for each position.
In fact, I'm hoping to get a clip of Anthony Rendon last night had an at-bat where he took a pitch away. I think it was a 1-2 pitch, and he took a pitch that was away, and you'll see how his hands came right in the same slot. You never saw anything going out or at the ball away.
Yeah.
But we're going to be able to publish that clip where you realize from that one hand path, I can cover the whole zone. Yeah. I don't need to push the barrel around. But the problem with young hitters and hitters that have been, barrel swingers or shoulder swingers or, all those variants out there, they don't know how not to go after the ball with the barrel because their body has always put them in a position where that's what has to happen.
Yeah.
So the key is, as you say, it's just a matter of seeing how we can start training them to take better swings, then be able to be consistent with those better swings in a practice environment, then be able to take those swings out into competitive environment, into a game, and start trying to let it become consistent.
Yeah,
but you have to overcome all that wiring mentally as well as physically. But once they start having some success, then you can build on that consistency.
Yeah, and I think, at least from what I'm seeing, if a guy gets the setup right and they're balanced and they're moving forward, they should be fine. But the other thing that I've been kind of noticing and starting to pay more attention to is the tension level. If they get everything right, but the tension level is, they're too tense, then that's going to tend to lead to more of that front shoulder pulling off. So the tension level matters.
Absolutely. It's so tough because obviously sitting in the box in a game is definitely an anxious environment that's going to have potential to create a lot of tension. So it's almost counter again to human nature, but we have to really get as relaxed as possible and get the shoulders out of it and be almost upper body neutral, just relaxed. in order to have, our maximum effect when we make that move and, start our swing. But that's another reason you see a lot of the kids are very shoulder engaged. That's tension. Not only does that take them out of their legs and create bad body moves, but it also creates a lot of, upper body tension, which is, going to have a negative impact not only on how they move, but also how they see. Vision is directly impacted by the tension. So, constantly it's, how relaxed can you be? Which is completely antithetical for anybody that, it's 3-2 pitch, bottom of the ninth, the game situation online, and now go hit. So, anxiety, that's part of our game.
Yeah.
But we have to make it less of a part. The only way to succeed is, once again, being relaxed and as calm as possible. Yeah. And then, of course, trusting that all the work you've done is there.
Yeah, and another word that gets thrown around a lot is adjustability. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. We talk, it all comes back to the same thing we talk about, being balanced, moving properly. Adjustability is the ability for me to, start my move and be able to handle different pitches, different locations that quickly. Because if I have no adjustability, I start my swing, then either I get there or I don't. And in most cases, that means I'm probably going to get blown up. But as we talk about being able to go in that line and maintain that hand path, allows us to be able to hit in a line, which means I can get to the fastball, but I still have enough time and ability to actually continue to adjust to other pitch speeds, movements, and locations. We pretty much tell people that the minute that the top hand comes around the bottom hand, or the wrist start breaking, we've lost all adjustability.
Yeah. Which
means we can only get to a very limited number of balls, and that may not be as evident at the lower levels of the game. But once a hitter is exposed to movement and velocity, and then of course better spin game, the holes in those swings are just exposed, and hitting now becomes almost impossible.
Yeah.
So what we definitely want to think about having that swing path. We talk about that, those hands in a line, the A to B line, that gives us adjustability downstream. And anybody that thinks that we can be perfect, well, we can't take any swing, duplicate it 100% to a certain point in time. Now with the variation of what's happening, across the board in pitching. And I'll just tell you, I'm not a golfer, but I think a lot of people have tough being consistent with a little golf ball standing, not even threatening them, down below, and taking a swing at it.
Yeah.
So the dimensions of difficulty go way up. So there's not a need for adjustability in golf. That ball is always going to be where you place it.
Yeah.
In baseball, we have to be able to contend with, between 98 and 78 with, various movements. That's going to get worse. And that's, I'm not saying that the amateur player, the high school player, college players don't deal with, increasingly better pitching. They do.
Sure.
But what I feel is that from the minute they start swinging a bat, they should have the moves and the patterns that are going to be able to carry them and allow them to adjust to better pitching.
Yeah. So can you talk about those kids that get really top hand heavy and they break that wrist really early and they're turning that bat out of the zone? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, that's usually they're trying to get the barrel control, but you also start realizing that becomes a very limited contact point.
Yeah.
Because they're going around the ball generally, and again, this could be like a lot of stronger, earlier. I call the man-child, the kids that get stronger at an earlier age. They develop a little faster. They can actually be more physical at the ball, and everybody suddenly says, "Oh my God, look at this kid! He's going to be great." And then suddenly, by high school or college, they're not even on the scene because the mechanics that they applied with their physicality weren't going to allow them to adjust. So just being able to get the barrel on the ball now seems to work, but that's a diminishing return when you start seeing pitching get harder, a little bit better velocity, and definitely when, you know, the curves and sliders and changeups are getting better and guys are being able to throw those consistently. So in anyone that's going to be like a top hand dominant trying to like control the barrel, now I'll say the top hand and dominant underneath, but not around.
Sure.
So I'm talking about the kid that's bringing that barrel around. You just realize that they're not going to be able to cover a fraction. They might cover a third of the pitches, possibly. And I'm not saying cover them well, but just because of what that move means, if you look at a strike zone and you look at what the hand and barrel are doing, you know, it's like from a pitcher's view, you realize, you know, there's some tremendous holes in there.
Yeah, so talking about the barrel, and I know you're not a big fan about talking about it. You know, you'd rather talk about the hands. But if you go on social media, you're going to see the barrel flying all over the place. So what should the barrel be doing?
Which we want to see, ideally. We don't want to see a lot of pre-pitch swing, bat movement behind us, particularly the flat bat, because that puts it at its heaviest. And I have no other choice but to bring it around, as we talked about, to make an arc swing. So once we get to that 50-50, we're looking at our hands probably being fairly vertical, somewhere very close to, you know, top hand on top of bottom hand, maybe slightly off, but it's going to be up and down. And then the barrel is just static, following the hands as they pull, you know, into that line we talk about, you know, to go into the A to B path. And the bat will just be following that move until the point that now we start getting closer to the front of the body. And now we're going to sync it all together. And then the hands may make a move to bring the barrel there to the ball. And that's happening from, like I said, from that A-B line, which that's your adjustability. Yeah. But I don't really want to see the bat certainly starting a swing behind the hitter, either in an arc or even in a flat zone, because that's called dumping the barrel.
Yeah.
I really want to kind of create almost, the bat will be parallel to the ground as it's getting probably to my midsection, you know, just being led by the hands.
Yeah. So good, man. So we've been talking about the swing. So I'd like to talk a little bit about hitting. You get to work with great hitters across all levels. How do you help them understand what their approach should be?
Well, as people think, there's, you know, every hitter is different.
Yeah.
At the major league level, there's an incredible amount of information that's available to a hitter on, you know, the opposing pitcher, what their history has been, you know, what's their predictability from a point of certain pitches in certain counts of situations, what that pitcher's done over the last, you know, 3 starts or 3 appearances, you know, spin rate. There's a lot of data that's out there for hitters. There's also, you know, the anticipation of how is that, you know, pitcher going to try and pitch you. So at the highest level of the game, there's a lot of information available. But it still comes down to the approach of each hitter is going to be slightly different. As I've always talked about, you know, building a hitter, there's, you know, it's not one size fits all. And the same thing has to go for approach.
Yeah.
And I think that filters down into your, you know, obviously, you know, collegiate and, you know, high school levels, or youth ball. Obviously, the younger the hitter, the simpler you want the approach. And I guess above all, I'd want hitters to be aggressive from a standpoint of really trying to, you know, really go after their strike zone. The problem is you don't want them, you know, you want to kind of temper their aggressiveness rather than try to overcome them being passive, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You want them wanting to hit. You want them, you know, swinging the bat. Now, as you get up in high school and you've got, you know, a little different, you know, pitching modality coming at them, It's a matter of trying to, figure what are the strengths of this hitter. Can he handle the whole plate? Does he have good coverage? Or does he have a problem, really getting into lane 1 or lane 2? A lot of hitters will split the plate, and we'll talk about lane 1, middle in, lane 2, middle away. Sometimes there's 3 lanes. But the key being that whatever the swing of the hitter, what they can handle, if their swing isn't going to, let's say you're saying, look, we're going to sit lane 2, which is away. We're going to, drive the pitch away. Well, that won't work if that hitter's swing doesn't allow him to do that.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to take into account what this hitter is capable of doing. Where this hitter is in the lineup. What do you expect from this hitter? There are certain guys that you probably want to be, fairly particular when they hit. You may have guys that you're going to have to go deeper into counts. And then on the flip side, you're going to have other, hitters with, lesser or, different abilities, which their approach has to be based on where they're likely to be in a game and what the situation is. So I guess the broadest approach I can give that works for everybody is how relaxed can you be in your setup?
Yeah.
Because it all starts there. So if you think that I'm ready to relax and go see the ball, we're probably going to be pretty good. And by the way, that's just what we do with 2 strikes too.
Right.
I think we talked about that is, people panic when, when there's 2 strikes. There's no reason to.
Yeah.
It's just, and coaches overreact to it. Parents overreact to it. We're going to strike out, and there's no big deal to it. It's not that big a deal. People seem to, prefer a pop up or a 45 hopper to a pitcher as better than a strikeout. But hey, an out's an out. We're going to make a lot more outs in our life than we are going to have successes. And, quite a few of those outs are going to be swing and misses. But the problem is, if the getting hitters to just relax, don't do anything different, get really relaxed, and go see the ball. Go on time, go see the ball. Don't wait to say, I got to make sure it's a strike, because by the time you're waiting to see a ball to make sure it's a strike, you're going to be late, and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So that element of timing always comes in.
Right, and you see that all the time. So here's what they're doing. They're trying to let the ball get deep. They're trying to stay back. They're trying to see if the ball is a strike. And then they're trying to cover every pitch that the pitcher has. Instead of just saying, I'm going to get the fastball and I'm going to catch it out front and trust my swing will adjust to other pitches.
Bingo. I mean, I know that people, the average person is not going to understand that, but that's the absolute key to hitting. I'm going to be on time for the fastball, and I'm going to be able to make my adjustments, because if I'm doing everything right, I will be able to have better pitch recognition and understanding of what's coming at me if I'm on time, which generally most people don't understand. Good timing would probably fall under everybody's criteria as, they're early.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I want to be early. I want to be moving to balance. I want to be starting that move, right when the pitcher pulls the ball out of the glove. And I'm going to learn to try to adjust from there, but being able to do that, game changer.
Right.
Like I said, most young hitters, wait to see the ball coming at them before they start. And then they're making decisions. And the good ones can kind of rocket that barrel around and hit the ball, and everybody applauds. But the reality is, it's not the way we want to swing. And that's where you get those upper body swings that kind of just develops from there. But yeah, relax as much as you can, go see the ball. Works all the way around.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. You got a hitter, and he's hitting well. But the swing, we know, won't translate to the upper levels. But he's hitting. So for the coach and the parent, do you let him go, or do you bring awareness?
Well, here's the tough one. For me, it's where is this player at at his level. If he's getting ready to go to high school, or he's in high school getting ready to go to college, if they're having some success, when they come into me, I'm still going to be looking for the things that are going to be issues later. Now, if somebody's swinging the bat well, they're going to stay with that hot streak. I get that. But we also have to present out that, let's say, the 12-year-old or 13-year-old who's really hitting the ball really well at their level. And if you look at that swing and understand, what are going to be the problems later, here's the tough question. If you continue swinging the way he's swinging, he's just building in a worse pattern and muscle movement that may not be easily corrected. Yeah. So when the failure does happen, well, it could be a lot more. It could be intensely more difficult to try and fix that. On the flip side, if somebody's hitting, you kind of let them hit. I mean, we see that if you look at Major League Baseball, you'll see that there are a lot of variations to swings. And if you take the top hitters in the game, they all look different. So as long as, a guy is getting the job done, you got to kind of step back at the higher levels, unless you see something, that is going to be a long-term detriment. But usually, like I said, the key is, where do you want this hitter to be? Because when do you want them to start working on corrective moves? When they're failing or before they start failing?
Yeah. Well, there's that.
So a lot of it's comfort level of the hitter, where you at in the season. You're going into playoff season for high school baseball. You're kind of going to let things be, I would presume. You want guys comfortable when they're going into that competition. So the trick is being able to understand what moves are going to be in the future. And maybe it just be, let's get your timing earlier.
Right.
It might be something non-swing related from one standpoint, but just try to get pieces or the littlest thing in that might be, something that you can build from, for the future swing. That's a tough one. And again, it just takes in, got all the variables involved. For a younger hitter, pre-high school, absolutely get after it. You want them to be at their best when they're learning to compete. And the sooner they have a good swing, or better swing mechanics, every swing they take is going to build them for the future, not tear them down. So yeah. I think, and then of course the younger high school players as well, because, they're going to want to compete at their highest level. So it's going to be one of those, almost individual by individual determinations. But me, I'm like, let's start this process of getting fixed as soon as we can without causing someone to be too uncomfortable. Now, there are cases where obviously I work with people and you're going to get uncomfortable, but, we have to get this done because we're under a deadline. No offense or buts about it. We got to perform. Yeah. So, but luckily, most youth players, most non-professional players, some college players may feel that we have time. So, starting to work might, and doing this revamp, there might be a time where we can suffer through a little bit of quote unquote being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And some kids need to, unfortunately, you could show them and you could talk about it, but some kids are not going to buy in until they fail enough, which is really unfortunate.
Absolutely. And I know, the kids and the parents are out there looking at social media and all that. There's a lot of self-promotion out there, and, there's no filters. There's, I don't know. It's like, almost out of control. Yeah. But they'll look at all these things, and, you have to be very careful what you buy into, what's really going to work. And it's not a matter of, don't listen to me talk about hitting. Go watch what hitters hit and then see how that fits what they're doing. Yeah. But there's so many things out there that these kids and parents are exposed to that really work against them. Yeah. Fixing it later, not the easiest thing. I mean, yeah. I wish there was a magic button on every hitter, but I think you've done enough hitters realize it takes a lot more work to get a new habit.
Yeah.
But, if you love the game of baseball and you expect to play, then you're going to do what it takes to try and get better.
So a couple more questions, Doug. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know right now you are the resource, but what are some of your resources? Do you have any go-to resources?
Got it. No. I mean, like I said, there are obviously people in the game that I talk to, and we share ideas and all. And I guess, yeah, there's not necessarily a resource. There might be someone I might talk to, but generally I'm doing, people calling me.
Right. Yeah, no.
Yikes, I might be a resource. Yeah, I think I know it sounds funny, but we've kind of been doing this a long time where we're kind of seeing what's going on. We kind of already have a really good idea of how to put the body in a better position. Of late, like I said, I've got a couple of people in the kinesiology field that I like going to, so I would say they're definitely resources because their level of expertise is far beyond mine could ever be on that physical side of things. My understanding's good, but they have the gift of being able to figure out, now for this person, this is the exercises we want them to do. So I would say, there are some resources out there.
Yeah.
But, that definitely made me think about that one, Geoff.
So if you were me and you were interviewing yourself right now, what would you have asked that I didn't ask?
I thought you did a pretty good job. I'm trying to think from a listener's standpoint, what would be something that, they'd love to hear that neither of us, thought to talk about or ask.
Yeah.
And I think we pretty much covered it.
Yeah.
I think the key is if I have younger hitters, all my hitters are working on balance, all of them, from the major leagues down. And I do work with amateurs. So, it helps me really understand the human body better to watch how amateurs move, how young amateurs move, what the levels of human development are in, making changes and things like that. But for younger hitters, definitely lots of balance work. I like to actually keep the bat light on the shoulder rather than trying to create additional muscle torque by trying to have to hold it up, tension in the muscles. Real relaxed, good move to the ball, get a nice, kind of the sweep idea, the kind of that golf swing idea of getting down that line and over. Other than that, I think we're going to have to wait for your listeners to come up with some questions for us.
Doug, this has been awesome, man. And for the people that are listening, Jonathan Gellner, who is a friend of ours, he has his own podcast called Ahead of the Curve, which I highly recommend checking out. And him and Craig Hyatt and Doug, they did a bunch of clips together, and you can find that on YouTube on his, Ahead of the Curve YouTube channel. So you can get kind of more of a visual of what we're talking about here today. So, Doug.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. Good job. I think that's a tough thing, Geoff. You're right, because we can talk about things and we can see it in our head or what we feel.
Yeah. But
for a listener, to be able to tie that to some video ideas, that's good. Thanks for that. It's a good plug, too. Thanks.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Doug, thank you for coming on.
Well, I hope to see you soon, too, by the way.